Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, the most accommodating New York beat writer there is. All he does is accommodate. Just leave that one there. He's the best in the business, most trusted voice in all of news. Once upon a time, maybe I would have had some trepidation saying that, but like news is just not in a great place right now. Ian Begley of SNY. Hello, sir. How are you?
Big John, what's happening, my friend? How are you?
I'm okay. You know, I mean, the season is over. I'm happy to not have to stay up late to watch basketball anymore because I'm old and I'm not too proud to admit that. So now we get to stay up late waiting for other things like Woj bombs and things of that nature, right?
All that fun stuff. Yeah, here we go.
We are almost to that time of year, so let's get right into it. The Knicks, I think, as we were moving along this season, there was much thought, from me at least, I won't speak for anybody else, that this was going to be the summer, capital T, capital H, capital E. Where something. We don't know what, something was going to happen because, like Fred Katz says to me, it's like, this is the NBA. Something always shakes free. Before we get into some of the specifics, sitting here right now, if you had to wager a guess as to what the Knicks think lies ahead this summer, would you guess that they think that this is going to be a summer that includes a seismic or seismic-ish transaction of some sort? Or would you think that they are starting to maybe wrap their heads around or starting to prepare for something that is a little bit more subdued?
If I had to guess, I would guess the latter. I think right now the focus is, let's focus on Anunoby. Let's focus on Hartenstein. Let's get those guys back. And then, if there's an opportunity later in the summer, something shakes loose, sure. But I don't know what's on the horizon that's kind of obvious that, we all expect to happen right now. I thought it might have been Minnesota during the season, but then they play the way they play. And now I think even if they wanted to make a big trade to shed salary like a Karl Anthony Towns trade, that ownership situation is so in flux that I don't even know who would make that decision. I mean, Glenn Taylor's the decision maker right now, but how can you make that kind of seismic decision with the ownership situation the way it is? So I kind of see that as off the table. And there's nothing else to me that's super obvious where you say, oh yeah, sure, he's going to get moved. He's an obvious fit for the Knicks. Brandon Ingram, I'm sure New Orleans is going to have a lot of conversations about him. I haven't heard anything strongly on New York there yet. So if nothing emerges that we're unaware of right now, I would assume that they hold their powder. One X factor, obviously, is if OG Anunoby decided to go elsewhere, which I think is unlikely. In that unlikely scenario, you would assume the Knicks try to swing some kind of sign and trade to recoup some assets and to bring somebody back. But I really see it as less likely than OG coming back here and them ultimately getting a deal done.
Let's stick with OG for a sec because your former colleague on ESPN, Brian Windhorst, who has joined us on your wonderful show, The Putback, which will be broadcasting all the time over the next few weeks. So be sure to tune into SNY and all of their channels to check that out. You always have just such great guests on and you do great reporting on there.
Including this handsome gentleman who's got the headphones on right now.
Do we have a third person on? I didn't see anybody else here. He caused some ripples with saying OG was, maybe not thrilled with where the offers are at right now. Do you, I mean, again, this is all guesswork because it's not like Leon Rose is answering your guys' questions on a regular basis. If you had to guess, do you think the Knicks are operating in a way of like, there's a place that we don't feel comfortable going to? Or is this, do you think, more just like, hey, we're going to try to get the best deal that we could get, but at the end of the day, and you've said versions of this, like, we gave up what we gave up to get this guy. It's not like replacing him is going to be easy. Like, where do you think they are on that spectrum?
I do think that there's a place that they'd rather not go in terms of a number or a threshold. But look, end of the day, it's a negotiation, right? So if a team like Philadelphia comes at OG, let's say they miss out on Paul George, they come at OG with a monster offer exceeding the place where I think the Knicks are not comfortable going, you have to bite the bullet, I think, because what are your options? I mean, you don't have many, barring some kind of sign and trade that would limit your options moving forward, and that is just difficult to maneuver. So, yeah, I think kind of both things are true. I think there's a place that they probably prefer not to go. But at the same time, it's not like they have much leverage in this situation, given how things have transpired to date.
And one more on the OG thing, because there's a lot I want to get to. Like, I think when, again, someone like a Brian Windhorst gets on and he has a way with words that he knows how to generate, keep the eyeballs on him. You could think a lot of things when you hear something like that. Do you get the sense that like the relationship between OG and his team, which notably is CAA, and the Knicks is like in a bad place, or like is it more just like what you just said, like this is negotiating?
I think more so negotiations. I think that, look, I don't want to characterize or mischaracterize anything about OG Anunoby, but something that has been kind of consistent from the people I've spoken with, from the people who've coached him. It's hard to kind of get a read on at first.
Interesting.
And I think that, not so much teammates, but maybe other people in the organization just had a tough time getting a good read on him early on. So I only say that to say like that kind of can impact your thinking of where you might be with a guy, but I haven't heard any indication of things being in any kind of bad place. So I'm going to go ahead and assume it's just negotiating 101, trying to get the best possible deal for your client. But again, I mean, unless OG Anunoby were to go a different way and change agents and leave CAA, I mean, I just can't see this ending up in any way that is not OG coming back to New York.
I'm going to leave it at that because that's where I want to leave it, because it's going to put a smile on my face. I don't want to envision a world where OG Anunoby is not on the Knicks next year. I know it's going to probably cost a lot of money. Actually, sorry, I lied. One more. Do you think the Siakam contract, I know it just happened, so this is kind of unfair to throw at you. Do you think that has any impact on the negotiations here?
I think I might be wrong about this, but I think Siakam was eligible for a higher number.
They could have got a fifth year, right?
Yeah, and the extra year. And so, but even annually, but maybe I'm wrong on the annual part of it. I think everybody kind of knew that was going to be the case. So I don't think like it happening today, like changes anything drastically. Cause I think the assumption from, people just kind of put reading the tea leaves and knowing how these things work was this is what was going to end up happening with Indiana and Siakam. So I don't think today necessarily changed anything. I don't know if that number changed anything. I mean, the market, had been well set prior to this. And, I wouldn't be surprised if OG's deal kind of resets that market. So it'd be interesting to see, where things go. But again, if you see OG Anunoby has left CAA and has gone with Agency X, then I think you get worried if you're a Knicks fan and you want OG back. But until we get there, I don't think there's a huge reason to be concerned at the moment.
Let's stick with CAA clients. Isaiah Hartenstein, brought to the Knicks on a deal. Maybe you could say the same thing about Jalen Brunson a couple of years ago. That may be too good, because obviously the Knicks are now limited to offering him a deal starting at $16.2 million next year and topping out at $4 for 72 over 4 years. I'm going to do my favorite thing, which is to read between the lines on things that Ian Begley says. I have not gotten the sense from you that you you're at DEFCON 5. Right? I always get that wrong. DEFCON 1 is the most serious one, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That you're at a DEFCON 1 in terms of Isaiah Hartenstein going, whether it's taking a bag from Oklahoma City or something. And you recently had a great podcast with Michael Scotto for Hoops Hype along with Steph Bondi, in which you talked about potentially the notion of stability mattering to Isaiah, who has really, from the outside looking in, fit in really well with this culture. I'll just ask you, if you had to bet right now, do you think Isaiah is going to be back in a Knicks uniform next year?
Yeah, if I was making a bet, yes. I mean, I wouldn't put, a mortgage payment on it, but, a reasonable bet, I would say, yeah, I would think he's coming back. I think that, for me personally, OKC, I had heard just kind of rumblings, but I haven't been able to get it, to a place where somebody says, yes, for sure, OKC. I think what you will see, obviously, is different players and agencies, use these teams with cap space as leverage, as we see every summer. With OKC, I just don't know. I don't know how hard they would come at Hartenstein. If he gets that balloon offer, right, where it's 1 year and then a player option, that he'll have a lot to think about. But I don't know. 4 years being back here, place where he really thrived. Obviously, we all saw it on the floor, especially after Mitch went down. And then the idea that he was, I think, willing to go back to the Clippers, even if the money was not fully equal, because that was a place where he thrived and he felt comfortable. Just put those factors together. And to me, I would think that he's most likely to be back here. Although, the Knicks, as any organization would do, I think they're kind of doing due diligence, different scenarios. If you lose Hartenstein, where do we go? If something happens at the center position, where do we go? Who's available? Who do we like? I think that's the kind of thing that the Knicks are doing. And again, any team would do that. So I don't think that's necessarily an indication that they are, pessimistic on Hartenstein. I think they're just trying to prepare themselves for every scenario.
On that note, a lot of trades often get done on draft night, and the one that it didn't end up getting done, but the one that sticks out last year is Clint Capella almost got dealt, I believe was reported to Dallas, and it ended up falling through. And I'm just thinking, well, actually, now this year, Atlanta rumored to be interested in maybe some centers, like could Capella on the move be again? How important do you think it is for the Knicks to have a pretty good sense of, let's stick with Hartenstein, what is, or maybe a better question is, can they possibly have a good sense of the likelihood that Hartenstein will come back on draft night? Because as we know, tampering never happens in the NBA, and other teams are not allowed to offer as a Hartenstein any money until whatever it is, June 30th. Mm-hmm. Do you think this maybe gets sorted out-ish by then, a week from now?
There are times where this has happened, right? It's been understood going into draft night, if not, weeks before. This one to me feels a little bit different because of the Knicks' limitation financially, and the idea that, why wouldn't you want to at least test the market in a real way, even if you have an idea of what the market is? Why wouldn't you want to, put yourself out there? So in a perfect world for the Knicks, obviously they would know exactly what's going to happen. I think it's tough, though. I think this would be a little more cloudy than other situations because of the finances, because of what other teams could offer. So right now, my read is that they know he's going to get offers, and it's kind of the land of the unknown. So I would just hearing that, I would assume that that's going to be the case going into the draft as well.
Okay. Let's stick with the draft for a second. You've been pretty adamant that you think the Knicks are making one of these picks. They have 24 and 25 in this draft, back-to-back picks. This draft obviously is not thought of as one that's going to produce a litany of future Hall of Famers. So they're trying to maybe potentially kick one of these down the road or exchange it for something else. I don't know what that something is. Do you think they're going to have a tough time doing that? I mean, I got to just ask, what's your read on this draft from talking to people around the league?
Yeah, I do think the price is going to be higher to trade out of this into a future draft because of everything you just said, John. I think that, the draft experts and people people with teams also just feel like, this is not going to be a great draft. So you get that label on a particular draft, and the picks are going to be less valuable. So yeah, trading down the line, I think, would be expensive. And just in general, I mean, I think that I know that, depth was a concern during that Indiana series. And it wasn't just like, oh, everybody's hurt. It was like there was a instance where coaching staff had a direction they wanted to go. And because of that, there was, I guess I want to say that led to the notion that, hey, we need to try to find at least somebody in this draft that could come in and, be part of this, not rotation, but just a guy who we could rely on in spot minutes, maybe in different situations. And so I think, I know that's been part of the discussion. That's why I think they'll make one of these picks. Now, whether it's that early second and they trade up with the 2 first or whatever, I just think they will have a player drafted out of this draft that will be with them next season because of, what I had written and kind of what I'm talking about now. I think that's, unless some kind of trade presents itself where they can land that quote unquote big fish, I do think they'll end up getting somebody.
Just going off of that, if you had to wager a guess, would you think that the player that, again, let's assume they make at least one of these picks that they end up with from this draft would be a guy that could potentially, again, not be part of the rotation? I'd be shocked if anybody they drafted was part of the rotation next year, but like a break in case of emergency, like this guy could play now. He could give us NBA minutes now, as opposed to in 2 or 3 years, this guy might be something, but right now is not really ready to contribute.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it would be more so, hey, this guy, we might need him, like you said, break the glass in case of emergency this coming season, or, as soon as possible, rather than let's take a project and send him to Westchester for a few years. So yeah, I would guess that was the case. That's been kind of the Tibbs ethos, right? With taking players, guys who are kind of ready to go right away. Those are the guys that I think he likes. So I think maybe an older, more seasoned player over, an 18-year-old who hasn't played a ton in college, but has a lot of upside. I think that's the way it would go.
Speaking of Tibbs, check it's Wednesday, June 19th. No news yet.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Are they screwing with my guy?
It was interesting to me that Maurice Cheeks got hired before Tom gets his extension. I would have guessed it would have gone the other way, just logically. So I don't think they're screwing around at all. I think something will get done. Still, I believe that. I don't think that he'll go into next season with 1 year left on his deal. Nobody would want that. So yeah, I think to me, the most interesting thing to me is the length of this thing, and not necessarily the money, because the market's been set and you have to go where the market is based on what Tom has done these past few seasons. But how long, right? How long do you tack on the Thibodeau Knicks marriage? I would think 2 seasons and then, a team option, maybe 3 seasons and then a team option in total, including this coming season. But that to me is what I'm curious about, how long this thing will end up being.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about Tom he's 66, will be 67 in January. Like, the one thing I keep coming back to is, yeah, like all this money's been getting thrown around to coaches, but like those guys are younger than Tom, with the exception of Pop. But Pop's Pop, like he's in his own category. So like I've been hearing, obviously you're reporting on this, and you've been pretty, again, consistent. Like maybe it's just 2 years, right? I wonder if that's where the tension lies, because again, he's not a young man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to guess either. I just don't know enough about the details there to say, yeah, like they've gone back and forth and they can't figure out the years. I don't know that to be the case. But yeah, I think you would agree. We thought this would have been done at this point, right? That was going to be the first order of business, knock it out, and then get to the draft, get to free agency. clearly that's not been the order of operations. I mean, I guess the thing could happen before the draft, and then it goes the way we expected it to. But I thought it would have been done at this point.
Do you? I'm going to actually, Jonas P., one of our Knicks Film School subscribers, asked a great question. Thibodeau extension or Jalen Brunson extension? Which would you guess is more likely at this point that gets done this summer?
I mean, I'm saying I would guess that I don't know if I'd put one over the other because if I'm guessing, I would guess both get done.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's my read right now. I mean, look, things can change between now and what is it, July 12th, 11th? I forget the exact date. And things could change on the coaching front, I guess. But my best read on it now is that both those things, if I'm guessing, are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you never know. Maybe Detroit comes calling and offers $60 million to not coach a basketball team.
You know what interests me about that? Quick aside,
please.
I don't think Detroit would do that unless they would be getting some offset. Like unless Monty had something else lined up where they knew they didn't have to foot that whole bill. Just throwing that out there.
Reading tea leaves?
Yeah, I just can't see them being okay with that unless he had something else, unless he was going to, get a job and then some of it would be offset. It just wouldn't make sense to me. Why would you do it without
that? Who said it? It might have been Popper. It must be selling a lot of pizza. Little Caesars. From one extension candidate to another, I'm just gonna read a question from Anthony H. Ian said he does not expect a Randle extension. How does that correlate with Randle's standing in the eye of the team? So it should, again, if you're a big Julius Randle fan, like they are out there, should you, if you're listening to Ian Begley report, I don't think a Randle extension gets done this summer. Would you be worried about Randle's long-term place in the state of the franchise, or is this just more like it's not? There's some other reason why maybe it just wouldn't get done.
So I want to say that we did a predictions column, I think, on SNY,
yes.
And that was a prediction. And I don't want to like split hairs because it gets silly, but like I haven't reported anything, but that was my prediction. Predictions. I mean, I don't want to say it's rooted in nothing because it's not rooted in nothing, but you're talking about something that cannot happen until early August. And we talk about things changing. A lot can happen between now and then. So I'm not sitting here saying, it's not happening. I'm just, that's what I'm predicting. And if we're talking casually, that's what I would predict still. But I can't tell you like the Knicks and Julius are at odds. Like none of that has been surfaced to me, at least. That's just kind of my read going into it.
Okay. A couple more and then I'm going to get you out of here because it's a busy time of year. You brought up or maybe I shouldn't say you brought up, a name was brought up on a show, speaking of the putback that you just did, Jimmy Butler, who has been someone that obviously, Tom Thibodeau knows Jimmy Butler very well. The Knicks know Jimmy Butler very well from some battles over the last few years. Again, always trying to read between the lines. Do you think Jimmy is like a player that they have somewhere on their whiteboard? Like, hey, maybe in the right situation, he's someone we would want to target, or was that more just like he's a star? The Knicks are after stars, potentially could be after a star. You think it's more like that?
More the latter, just because, yeah, he could be available. The Knicks again are in the market to make a big deal. Jimmy, I want to say maybe past iterations of this organization, they would have been interested in Jimmy. Just where everything has gone past couple of years, I can't see it. I don't think he's the guy that, I think I said this on the putback. If I didn't, I meant to. So I'm glad we're talking about it now. I don't think he is the guy that the Knicks, same thing with Brandon Ingram, say, all right, let's go. Let's throw all the chips on the table because this is the player who's going to bring us to where we want to be. I don't think he's that guy. So I think, just by association, by where the Knicks are and where Butler is with Miami, it was just a name that I was talking about in terms of potential deals. But I don't see it. I don't see him as being the guy everybody is salivating over.
Okay. I'm going to end it where we started kind of and ask, as of right now, if you told the Knicks front office that this summer was going to be, we're getting back OG Anunoby at a number that we could live with. Isaiah Hartenstein comes back on his full, like the 4 for 72, the most that they could pay him. And maybe, and again, some reporting from you that, again, you're not hard and fast reporting, but if you had to guess, the Bogdanovich, they pick up that option. I don't want to mischaracterize. That's fair and accurate. That you, if you had, okay. Let's say they maybe flip that for, and a pick or something, or a couple picks or something for like a slight rotation upgrade. Do you think the Knicks would be happy with that outcome this summer, if you had to guess?
Yeah, I think they would. I think, how I look at it is, year over year improvement. Because I think that in a general sense, that's how the owner looks at things. He wants to see like a logical process and then the results correlating with that process. And I think neutrally, you would say that year over year, the last 2 years, they've gotten better. Obviously, 3 years ago to 2 years ago, they got a lot better. And then last year to this year, I think you look at the injuries and you say, yeah, they got better, clearly. So I think that's kind of how I look at off seasons. But I would say if you're projecting ahead, I think you'd be happy with that group and that outcome, depending on the Bogdanovich, who you got back. And I wouldn't discount the idea that he comes back and is a player for them actually next season. So yeah, I think you'd be pleased with that outcome. And you run it back and you see where it goes. So yeah, what would you think? Would you, or as an observer, would you be happy with that?
Yes, I'd be very happy. But I'm a worrywart by nature, so I am already picturing OG Anunoby in a Sixers jersey playing alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and Isaiah Hartenstein, collecting checks in OKC. So yeah, give me my guys back. And you know what? If it's Bogdanovich just that starts the year on the roster, like he's a good player. Like, is he perfect? No, he's not perfect. But like, you're at that price point, you're not going to get a perfect player. Literally, it could be a one-word answer. Is there a situation elsewhere in the league that you are keeping an eye on because you're just like curious what's going to happen?
I mean, it's obvious because we've been talking about it since the deadline last year, but Atlanta, what do they do? And then
interesting.
Connected to that is also San Antonio because you look with the Wembanyama. I guess they're at some point. I think somebody on ESPN said like, watch out for Victor, like he might want to leave, and that got laughed at. And I think that that was beyond what reality is. But I do think that the Spurs, regardless of how fast Victor does or doesn't want to go, I think they're going to be aggressive. They're on an aggressive timeline. I don't think they're trying to wait it out, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. I do think they'll be aggressive. So I just look at Atlanta and San Antonio and wonder what may or may not transpire there. Landry Fields spent time in the Spurs organization. There's a familiarity there. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on.
Once a Knick, always a Knick. Landry Fields.
Yes.
Ian Begley, it is both an honor and a pleasure to get to do these things with you. Look forward to our interactions over the next few weeks as things unfold, surely. You catch Ian on SNY, the putback, read his stuff. And what am I forgetting, Ian? I must be forgetting something.
Nothing. Just happy to jump on with you, man. Always fun to talk Knicks with you. Just in terms of future accommodations, just let me know how I can, make my schedule work around you, and maybe we could figure something out.
Listen, people laugh at the notion of being accommodating. It's no laughing matter. I'll just say that right now. It's no laughing matter. Ian's the best. I gotta get out of here. Thank you, Ian Begley. Go do what you're doing this time of year. I'm gonna go do what I do. And everybody out there, thanks for checking out another episode of Knicks Film School. We'll be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.